Hello. The
Hi.
date is April 9th, 2024. The interviewee is Maria Roden. I am Andriette Redmond, the interviewer. We're in New York, USA, and the language we'll be speaking is English.
Okay.
One.
Hello, can you tell us your name and your birthday and where you were born?
My name is Maria Rodin. This is my married name. I was born in Częstochowa, Poland in January 1725. And I was only born there, but I never lived there because my parents live in Warszawa. So when I was couple weeks old, I left Częstochowa and we went to Warszawa.
And
And I
your
live in Warszawa till I was about 10, 11. And then my parents moved to Oberschlesien, to Będzin. When I was living in Warszawa, I didn't even know about Jews. I didn't know that Jews exist. I didn't know that I was Jewish because my parents were not religious. They did not attend any church or synagogue. The religion was never discussed, was never politically discussed, especially in front of the children. So till I came to Będzin in after 1935, when Hitler got to power, and after Kristallnacht, then I found out that I was Jewish, which was quite a shock to me because, I was not the baby anymore, and I realized that there is completely new world. And when we came to Będzin, the question was, I need to go to school. And the system in Poland was, if you mandatory, you have to go 7 years to school. And this is it. If you wanted higher education, you only have to have 6 years, and then you went to gymnasium, which was 4 years, and lyceum 2 years, and then you could go to university. The curriculum was the same for the whole country. Not in America, my kids went to the same high school, but whatever my daughter knows, my son doesn't know, because you choose your subject. In Poland, you didn't choose. This is it. Foreign languages, we have German and Latin, and the rest of them went to school 6 days a week. We have 2 months vacation in the summer, 2 weeks during the winter vacation. So when we came to Będzin and was question of my going to school, they said that the private school, there was only girls' gymnasium, boy gymnasium, but people say this situation there, they were anti-Semitic. The Jewish children who were going to the school felt it. So there was one gymnasium which was donated building by Jewish philanthropists. So I was going to this school. It was private school, boys and girls. And I graduated to this 3rd year of gymnasium. I was 14 years old when the war started.
Was it a school just for Jewish kids?
They were mostly Jewish kids because the building was donated by Jewish philanthropist Fürstenberg. So this was a private school, boys and girls. We were uniforms. We were 6 days a week at school. And I was very happy there. Every summer, my parents rented in Mountain Resort a villa with their best friends who have 2 children. The son was in the same class with me, and we stayed there till day before 1st of September when the school started. Then we came back, and the husband commute or they stay. But this, and I was the only child. And I knew one thing, that I am alive. I adore my father. When I was little, on Sunday was the only day where they didn't work because Saturday was working day. And we went to school 6 days a week. So I jumped to my parents' bed and I was so happy. I felt so happy, secure, love. I said I could stay there the rest of my life. The feeling of love was always so strong in me since I was a child, and I idolized my father. And he was a very nice man. I really, all my life, don't remember him once raising his voice in anger or cares or do anything except being nice. And when this, before I was 14, this last summer, my father came like 2 weeks before we were supposed to go home and took us to Warsaw because we were living on a German border. So they were afraid that in case of war, this would be first things they take. So he took us to Warsaw because, first of all, my mother had family there. It was middle of Poland and nobody expected that in 2 weeks Germany would conquer Poland. They have tanks and Polish army had horse-drawn guns. I mean, it was ridiculous. And when we came to Warsaw, my father left because he was reserve officer in Polish army, so he was drafted. And we didn't know where once he was drafted, we didn't know anything about it. When German came to Warsaw, there was bomb and everything. And my mother said she wants to go home. So we went back to Będzin. By the time we went to Będzin, middle of October sometime, the apartment was empty. They took everything, including the nails from the pictures. It was empty apartment. But somehow my mother got some bed and a couple of things. So we stay in my room because it was not the front room, it was facing the back. And our nanny was with us because when I was little I have a nanny, but then I grew up and she never left. So eventually she was running the house, she was the housekeeper, she has people to do work for her, and she was very, very devoted. And my father was lucky because he had connection. So before the war, he got money from the bank because, you know, when they were talking war, everybody ran to bank to take money. But my father had connection, obviously, because he had 150,000 zloty. And they were packed with the paper band. And they made a corset for my mother with a packet, and they put the money in a packet. And my mother put it on, and she said I wouldn't be caught dead because it made me look fat. So my nanny was wearing the corset all during the time. So she was such an honest and good person because she could turn around and disappear. There was a war going on, but she stuck with us, and we came back. And not till March following year, my father came back. We didn't know what happened to him. But when Germans were approaching and Polish army was moving, they got caught by the Russian because Russian came and took the other part of Poland. So they were taken prisoner by the Russian. And 15,000 Polish officers and up the rank to general were summoned, put on a train. They took them to Katyn, and history shows that the Russian killed them all and put them in my mass grave. I don't know, my father didn't know where he was taken, but somehow when the train slowed up, he jumped. And this is how he survived and came back to us. And then they threw us from our apartment to another apartment. And then from the other apartment, they threw us to another apartment and eventually to ghetto. My father was the head of the housing department in ghetto. Because in ghetto there was like Jewish governor. There was the Jewish, how should I say, they call it, there was somebody in charge and was somebody in charge for housing, somebody for something else. And when I was at school, the senior class, there was a boy named Sevek Rubinlich. They never bothered with somebody who is in second class gymnasium, but I knew who he was because there were single classes and each class has 25 to 30 children. So there were like 25 to 30 seniors. So everybody knew them. And during the thing, we were already in ghetto. They wanted to give us a new identification. So they were looking for volunteers. Two were working, two. One was writing, one was dictating, and then we switched. And my husband, future husband, was in charge of it. So he always waited and took care of us, the last one. And because it was curfew, and he had a pass, so he brought me home. And this is how our, you can call a romance started. I was 16, he was 19. And he became the head of the Jewish police or militia, whatever you want to call. And the first time they came to the house and they arrested me, and they took me out of the house. I was wearing slippers, and they taking me to a square where everybody was collected, and they were sending them either to Auschwitz or to labor camp, whatever. But when he was taking me down, the policeman, there was like a passage with single, there were like a store, but people were living there. And we have a little dog, Fifi, Maltese, I have pictures. And Fifi was running after the policeman barking. So when he turned around to yell at the dog, I jumped in one of the open door and hide behind. When he came to the door, somebody was screaming upstairs because a policeman soldier, I don't know who the hell they were. The German found somebody hiding, so this one went, and by the time they left, I was waiting and I came back home. So this is how I escaped the first sending to a camp. And my father gave me a job in Rosner. Rosner was a factory, they making uniforms for German soldiers. And if you work for Rosner, you were secure because they were working for the German. So I got the job there, and my mother got the job there. And my job there was, they have a pieces of paper with the sizes, and I sewed the pieces with paper with sizes to the uniform so they know, because I didn't know how to sew. And we were in a ghetto, and what they did, the German, they came, they closed a street or two, took everybody and sent to Auschwitz and left. So during one of the things, they caught my father-in-law, who was a very prominent man before the war. He was the only Jewish mayor in Poland, in the Polish city. He was very well known with all the Jewish causes and things, which I'm not familiar because it was before we came, before the war, and I didn't know about it. So one of my husband's friends pushed him into the wardrobe and closed the key and left him there. After the German left, he went because he wanted to open and let him out. But when he opened the door, he was dead because the German came and with machine was shooting. So he killed him not even knowing that somebody is inside. So this is when my husband lost his father when he was 20, something like this.
And what was his name?
My father-in-law, which was not my father-in-law, the Rubinlich, he is the number 2 in a newspaper I have given you. And then we were sitting on a roof, we were changing and watching, because if we saw the trucks coming with German, we have hidden bunker. Everybody was hiding. And we were living in ghetto. There was 2-story brick house. You walk into our apartment, there was one room. There was stove for wood. There were 2 pails, zinc pail, one for clean water, one for dirty water. There were no plumbing. There were well outside. And toilet were a shack like half block further down there. So I slept in a kitchen and my parents slept in a room next to me. But after a while, they put another family in our apartment. So I still slept in a kitchen by myself, but the room where my parents slept, they put wardrobe in the middle and a sheet to divide, and were 2 beds. In one my parents slept and the other couple slept. And there were flat roof, so they make it so high, like a doppel. And we climbed there, and you climb like crawling, and you stay there in this position because it was so high and you couldn't move. And you wait till the German finished their shooting and taking people. When it was quiet, we went down. But this time was Judenrein. They came to liquidate the ghetto, so they didn't go. And we were there. And there was a young woman with newborn child, so she said she wants to go. So the people who were there said, you cannot because the baby will cry and give us away. So she said, if you don't let me go, I will tell German where you are. So they said, okay, but in case the baby will cry, you take care of it, or we should take it. She said, I will. They must have given something to the baby because the woman was next to me, and the baby was asleep. I don't know how many hours because there is, you just lay and you don't move. You don't know it's day, night, or whatever. When you didn't hear the shooting, you were hoping it's over. And the baby started crying. And I saw the woman putting the tiny pillow over the baby face and suffocates baby because the baby was crying. And we were there for a very long time. And then somebody left, went down, and he said the Germans are all over with dogs. And this is it. This is the liquidation on the ghetto. So we can stay there another day, but like body function and thirsty, and you just don't move. You get numb. So we came down and we give ourselves up. My husband, I told you, was the head of the police, so the Germans used him to go with them to check the houses. And he said he went to friend houses and he saw the fire was still burning in a stove, or the food was on the table. Sometimes dead body was laying on the floor. And at the end, they took us, my mother, my father, and the people who were living in the building, to the square. And they told us to lay it on the floor. And my father went on the elbow. He wanted to see who is still there. And a German came with the thing with the shotgun and hit him overhead, and he split his head. And somebody had like a gauze and something to put, first aid kit. And my father took a cup with him, so. And then they said they're looking people who work for Rosneft. So my mother and I were taken away, and there was like 30 of us or something like this. And they took us to the factory to finish the work which has to be done. And my father went to Auschwitz with my future mother-in-law. And she went straight to crematorium, and my father went to the labor, to the working command or whatever. I stay with my mother in a camp in where the ghetto was, and we finished it in about 2 weeks. And my husband came with his commander, which was Gestapo, and I was under SS, to tell me that he was getting paper, Polish. We will go as Polish citizens to Hungary, and in few days he will send somebody to smuggle us out. And the following day, they had a transport going, like few people, 20 people from the group supposed to be sent because the work was getting smaller and smaller. And the Jews who were in charge put my mother and me in a last row because you were standing outside, like parade. And the German commander came and he looked at the people and he said, I'm looking for somebody. And he kept going like this where we were standing till he came to the last row where my mother and I were. And he said like this, we should go to the transport. So when he took me, my mother said I go to, and we both were sent to Annaberg. So when my husband came, we were already gone. But when we got to Annaberg, it was transit camp. And was a lot of people. And the Jewish people who were in charge, whatever charge they were allowed to be, said to me, you Janek daughter. So I said yes. And I am here with my mother. They asked about my father. I said, I don't know. And they came to me a few days later and say, there is a transport going to Neustadt. The people will be working in Weberei. This is where they make fabric. You're working on the thing, I don't know,
Loom?
They call it in English. There is a big thing and there is like a little wooden thing go back and forth and make a fabric. Loom.
Yeah.
And every one of us has 4 looms to take care of. They kept my mother in camp to work in a kitchen. It was a small one. It was like 150 girls. And this is where I met Valerie, grandmother. She was there with her sister too. And this camp, they didn't cheat much of, we got 2 meals a day and we could survive the war if they would let us. But after a year, they liquidated the small camp and they sent us to Grimberg. Grimberg was already 500 girls, was a big camp. And my mother was working in factory, and I was a big girl. I was 5'7", and I was very much developed for my age. So they take me in a commando where they send us to load, unload stuff. We were mostly working outside. Whatever they needed, they sent us. And we were there, and for about a year. And then end of 44, they sent us Hungarian girls, few hundred Hungarian girls. And there were no facilities, so they divided us in 2 groups, 500 each. And we started the Dead March. So we went from Grimberg and the Oder all the way to Hanover on a countryside, the back road, because the highway were for military. And it was the coolest winter. If you saw the movie Battle of the Bulge, and you see the snow, how freezing it was. And we were walking from 500 girls, 150 made it to Bergen. We were walking from about 12 hours a day. Whoever they could find a barn or someplace, they put us in. And if the farmer was kind enough, he made some kind of a hot soup, which they put things, what they put for the pig and give us. And this snow was hitting your face because it was freezing and it was like rain. And the girl just dropped down, they fell. And the other one were walking over them because they were too tired to bypass them, and they just keep frozen to death. If you ask me if we could escape, yes, because when we were walking and there was such a haze, you didn't see the hand in front of you. You could just roll in the gutter, in a ditch, and wait till they pass and come out. This is what happened to somebody I know, a German, who were walking through Denmark. She did it in Denmark, and when everybody passed, she knocked on the door on a farmer. There was a Dutch farmer, and he hid them. But we were in the heart of Germany, so we couldn't knock on the door and say, hide us. When we were walking through the villages, and they have houses, and you could see the light was there. They were sitting at the table with the children and eating. And you said, would I ever be in a normal home and sit at the table and eat like normal people? Anyway, we got to Hanover, and in Hanover they put us on the train, and they locked the door, and they brought us to Celle, and from there we walked to Bergen-Belsen. When we went to Bergen-Belsen, they put us in a line for Entlausung. The Entlausung, they spray something against lice and things like this. Don't forget, all the time in a camp, you didn't wash. There was in Grimberg, there was a cut pipe in half with a hole in it, and they put water, so the water was falling down through the hole. So how much could you get? A handful to wash yourself and brush. There were no brushing teeth, but So for so many years we didn't wash, we didn't brush our teeth, we didn't wash our hair. So they were full of lices. So they spray us with the thing. And when we were staying in line, somebody came and said to me, Marisha, because Marisha is a nickname from Maria. So when I was young, nobody called me Maria, everybody called Marisha. There was a girl who went to the same class with me. She was in Auschwitz and she did something, and they said she's going to get 20 lashes. And when they taking her for the lashes, she saw people going to a train, cattle train, because this is how we were traveling, to go to another camp. So she ran away and mixed herself between the people to escape the lashes. And this is how she got to Bergen-Belsen. So she was there a longer time. And she said to me that if you go through you have to strip yourself naked. And if you have something, you cannot bring it through. When we knew then things are going to happen, we can be separated. The German said you have to give all your jewelry, gold, everything what you have. So the people give wedding band, whatever, but they hide something. They didn't give everything. And when the thing was sold and you were not sure that you wouldn't be arrested on the street and take away, everybody had a little, couple of rings or whatever, smaller things. You couldn't have a big chain, or you couldn't have I have a boots with a little heel, so they drill a hole in a heel, put a diamond in it, and people put diamond in the teeth like a filling. So I have a little thing, and my mother had a little thing. And when we came to the first came Annaberg, and they have us in line, and they said, if you have something, you have to give it. If we find it on you, we shot you on the spot. So my mother was scared, and she dropped whatever she had. I was stupid, so I kept. So that's what we have. In a second year of war, we were not in a ghetto yet. We were out of our apartment, living in different place. My mother disappeared for a week. I was 15 years old. Nobody told me anything. She came back. She was in bed for a few days. And then later on, I found out that she went to another city, Sosnowiec. You could go by trolley. And she had surgery because they said that she has a cancer, so they did mastectomy on her breast. So she has a bra, and she had the whatever in a bra. But when we were in Grünberg, what they did, the German came to, and we have to strip naked and walk 2 by 2. And they decided this one go to the right, this one go to the left. If they found that somebody was not up to the job, so they sent it to Auschwitz. When I was walking with my mother, we both had small breasts and we were skinny. So my shoulder covered my mother, sort of. If they would choose my mother to go, I wouldn't hesitate to go with her, but somehow we made it through all the thing. And we came to Bergen-Belsen. And when she said to me, you wouldn't be able to bring it, I give it to her. And her name was Ruszka Itzkowicz. She went to the same class with me, but we never, besides the thing in a class, we never socialized. I was never friendly with her out of school. And when we came on the other end of the thing, she gave me the things back. This was something she could say, the German saw it, the German took it, she gave it to me. There was a barrack, which they call a revier, which was like hospital. And the woman in charge was Dr. Binko. Dr. Binko was not a doctor, she was a dentist. And she has a girl who was working for her, Mala Pawek, who was original from Auschwitz, from Oświęcim. And I was told that if you give them something, you can get a job. When we came to Bergen-Belsen, they put us in a barrack. They were not beds, they were not preachers, they were not bunks, they were nothing. They just put as many as they could on the barrack, and one was laying on top of another. And one of the, because they had the Hungarian girl wanted to steal my boots, so I was fighting with her in the dark. She scratched my hand, and by this time it was already infected, and because I was holding to my boots, not only did I need the boots, but I also knew there was a diamond in it. But anyway, the conditions were awful. And so somebody introduced me to the Mala, and my mother had a ring. It was the size of a quarter. It were diamonds around, and big diamond in the middle, and a royal blue inside. And I give her the ring, so my mother could get a job in kindergarten. And I got a job in barrack where women were bearing children. The children barrack had children from 4 years to 6, 7, from Belgium and Holland. Not Jewish children, just children. They were the country who had diamonds. So the parents used to do, they hide the thing, and they showed the children where they hide it in case they survive the war and will know where to go and look for it. So they used the kids. First they try candid and they try beating because they wanted to get the information from the little children where the parents hide the diamonds. This is why they kept the little children. My way of thinking was because, and they were not Jewish children, they were Dutch and Belgium, you know, the parents have diamond business. And I figured out they would keep the kids some food. So if you have the food, so my mother would have some food too. And I got a job in a barrack. They arrested a lot of Russian women, prisoner of war, and some of them were pregnant. So they took them to Bergen-Belsen to have the babies. Now, I didn't know how baby was made. I was told stork bring babies. And I should help them deliver the baby. Was ridiculous. But listen, they start screaming, they help each other. I didn't participate.
Can we take a break?
Sure.
Thank you. One.
Okay. So my mother has a job and I have a job. And then the typhus came. People got typhus. When the typhus came, the Germans locked up the camp and they didn't come in and they didn't provide food, nothing. So you have thousands and thousands of girls walking around like zombies with very high fever and diarrhea, because this is the symptoms of typhus. And wherever they were standing, they were just, so the whole camp became like one big cesspool. And the girls were just dropping dead wherever they were standing because they were so weak that they couldn't walk, so they fell and they died. My mother was, I told you, in a barrack with the children, so I went once to visit her, and they told me she is not in because she got sick, and there was one barrack for the sick. So with 1,000 walking dead, you know, like my mother was in the barrack, and with 3 girls to a bank, 2 this way and 1 this way. And I went to see my mother, and she gave me whatever she still had from the jewelry. She said, take it because I am going to die. And I said, Mom, you have fever, you have hallucinate. She said, no, I know I am going to die and they will take it. So I want you to keep it. And she gave it to me, which I didn't want it, but she insisted. And she said, I'm going to die. So I asked whoever was there somebody? The doctor said, are you kidding? Nobody was here, nobody gave us water, nothing. And when I went next day, she was already gone. So they took her and they stripped everything she had on and threw her on a pile of the dead body, which was like 2-story high by then. And we didn't have water, we didn't have food. And as I said, there were no toilets, so the whole camp was smelled. It was you made your noises. I got typhus too, and there were not water. We were praying for rain, so we could have rain. Some girl got in the morning to lick the leaves from the dews because you're so thirsty, you're burning with fever, and they just let us die. And my mother died, and 3 days later, the English came. They came like space people because of the typhus. And they took the very sick. Some they sent to Sweden, Norway. Some they put in the local hospitals. And they moved them to, there were military officer barracks, which was a little house, has single room, where they put 2 girls to the room, and 1 big bathroom, showers and toilet. And they were coming with truck and giving us food 3 times a day. But they asked for volunteers because 1 barrack was with the girls who were not, they didn't bother even to move them. They just let them there to die, and they needed somebody to be there. And when my mother died, there was a girl with me, and she was 10 years over. Her name was Regina. She was originally from Auschwitz. And she, how I said, took care of me. You know, said things will be better. You know, tried to comfort me. And she said, let us stay. So being sick ourselves, we stayed to take care of the dying one. So every morning the Hungarian prisoner of war came, and the woman had something put in her veins. If it went through, she was alive. If it didn't go through, which means she was dead. So you told it to the Hungarian soldier. They took and threw it on a truck and put it in some place and burn it. So once the girl was having all the things still, and I said, she's dead. They brought her back. When they threw her on a truck, she started mourning. It was something wrong, the thing didn't go through, so they brought, next day she was dead. After everybody was dead, the Regina, this was her name, I and another 2 girls who went to the barracks where they kept us. It became this place camp. The military barracks became later on this Bergen-Belsen, this place. And we were there. And by this time was already June, July, and young men were coming through the border, smuggling themselves. I don't know, they were bringing dollars, cigarettes, whatever. I was not interested. But what was interesting, when they came through the border from Poland, they met in somebody barrack, and they say, I was in this city. I saw so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Do you know anybody? And this was the news which was traveling. There were no mail, no Red Cross was completely useless. And people in city concentrate in front of a railroad station because they wanted to see who came. You came, whom did you see? And then they were passing the word. They were in this city and they saw so and so and so and so. And this is how people were trying to find. So the young guy came and everybody gathered to listen. And he said, well, he was in Katowice, and he saw so and so and so and so, and he heard then a young man mention name of my boyfriend at this time. Seve Grubinlich is a mayor of a city in a new territory because after the war they give part of Poland to Ukraine and give Poland part of Germany. So they call it a new territory. So he is a mayor in one of the towns in the new territory and make a name for himself. So I knew that my boyfriend would never talk about marriage or anything, is alive. So I wrote a letter and I asked the boy, the young man, if he would take it. So he said, sure. He took the letter, I wrote the name in Bergen-Belsen. I don't know what happened to my father. And I am sitting because I hoped that I will find something. The young man took the letter, I don't even know his name. He went to Katowice and he went to the railroad station where I told you everybody congregated, and he saw my father. So he went to my father and he said, you have a daughter named Marysia? He said, yes. He said, I saw her in Bergen-Belsen. She doesn't know about you, but she knows about Seth. And she gave me a letter to him. So from the letter, my father figured out that my mother must be dead. And he sent me a letter through this kind of, then I should come to Katowice, then he is in Katowice, and give me the address. When I got the letter, like 5 weeks later, now I want to go to Poland. So we have to go through the border, not official, the one you couldn't go. So the girl wanted, Regina, who was with me, Regina, she wanted to go to Poland too, because her brother had a 2-year-old girl, and he left it with Polish people. And she didn't know if the brother survived, so she wanted to go and pick up the little girl. So we tried to go to Poland, but alone we couldn't go through the border because we didn't know. And the young men didn't want to take us because they said if a Russian stopped them, they give them bottle of vodka, they give them bribery, and with women they rape, and there's a different, and they did it for business, they didn't want complication. And took us from Hanover, Bergen-Belsen through Hanover, we came to Munich. It took us about 2 weeks because they didn't want us on the train, we didn't have, So we came to Munich. And in Munich there was a young man. He must like me because he said he will help me to get to Poland. And he found 2 men who said they were going. We can follow them. They are not responsible for us. And if the Russians stop us, they keep going. And we said, okay. We were lucky, we went through and nobody stopped us, so we came to a village in a mountain, and then we got on a train. When I was in Bergen-Belsen in the displaced people camp, I was walking, and there was a man, Josele Rosensaft, who was in charge, make himself in charge of the display DP camp. And he stopped me, and he said, Julianek daughter. If somebody said to me, Julianek daughter, was the biggest compliments I could get. And he said, did you have from what father? I said, yes. I heard he is in Katowice, Poland, and he wants me to come and we try to, get over. He said, do you have money? And I look at him like he's crazy. And he gave me 2 notes, $100 each, military dollars. And I said, I cannot take it because I don't know when my father will be able to pay you back. And he said, don't worry, I owe you father more than $200. And he gave me the dollars. When we came through the mountain to the village, and there was a mountain train going to Pils to get to regular train, there were perhaps 20 of us because the other were coming people through. And he said he needed money, so they said, we don't have money, we came from concentration camp. So this idiot say, I have money. So he took the $100 and he said it covered for all of them. And I let him have it because I never knew, money was never discussed in my present. I didn't know value of money. People were making fortune of cigarettes I was giving away because I never smoked. So I am not materialistic, and I never was, and I never know, you know. So anyway, we came to Prague, and in Prague on a railroad station was a lot of booths from every country, and they give you immigration paper. And there was a Polish officer, and he took my name, where I am going, and it was arrival. I arrived October 5th, so he wrote Monday. Not October, Monday. And I came to Katowice, and I went on the address, and a woman opened the door, and she said she was expecting me, but my father went to see my boyfriend, at this time, and he's not there, but I am welcome to come, and I took a bus. After 7 weeks of traveling, I took a bus, and I slept in a bed. Next day, my father came, and he said he saw Sev, and Sev said that he wants to marry me as soon as I came back, because he lost everybody. That's only what he wanted, what keep him alive, that I will be alive, and he married me. So I came 5th of October to Poland. The first weekend he came to visit me, and the second weekend we got married on the 21st. And I got married, and my father was 45 years old when the war ended. My mother was 40 when she died. He was 45. He was very young looking. He was professional man. And a lot of women who became widow after the war were after my father. So he was not missing anything. And the woman made me the cake for the wedding, the sandwiches, because there was nothing. My father didn't have any money. And I came, I didn't have bra, I have panties, I didn't have even dress. So I don't know how my father got fabric, and they made me a dress within 1 week. It was navy 2 pieces woolen dress. And I got married, and the woman made the cake and the sandwiches. I don't remember. Then was a curfew. So either you leave at 8 or 9 o'clock, or you stay till 6 in the morning. The wedding was civil ceremony in my father's friend apartment. He was someplace new. He was not in during the war, but his apartment survived. His sister was there, so my wedding was in this apartment. There were people whom I never saw in my life because they were my husband friend from where he was and my father friend and nobody of mine. And there was the curfew. They were drinking. I don't drink. So either I stayed until 6 in the morning or I go. So at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever the curfew was, I went with my father friends to their house and I slept my wedding night in their guest room. And next morning, my father, with my husband, came to pick me up. So this was my first marriage experience. And then my husband came in ambulance because there was the only car available. So we went by ambulance back to Ludwigsdorf, where he was the mayor. And I was there a month. And my father said there's no future for young people in Poland because it was communistic. We should go. And I said, I don't go without you. He said, I come later. I said, I wouldn't go, no place. So my father, whatever business he had, he started. So he sold it. And for $50, because the Polish zloty was nothing, German mark was nothing, so the only valuta was dollars. And one of my father's woman friend, they put the money in a condom, and she baked a bread and put the condom with the money in a bread. And when we went through the border, I have a little basket, and there was napkin, was the bread, a piece of salami, wurst, couple, because you couldn't buy anything. There was no restaurant thing. Everything was on coupons, so if you travel or you went, you have to bring the food with you. So and my husband, I told you, he was a mayor, so he got passes for us that we were German Volksdeutsch leaving Poland for Germany. Do you know what Volksdeutsch is? Volksdeutsch is a German who live out of the country. And a lot of Germans were living out of the country. And because this part was annexed to Poland, so people from east were going west. I'm talking now about German. So he got the pass and we were German, Volksdeutsch, and we live in Poland. So when we came to the border, the German police on the other side say to us in German, the polnische Schweine haben Reichsrecht müssen. The Polish pig throw you out. And we say yes. And they said the town, the border town, has nothing, hotel, no nothing. But they said, we have empty jail, so why don't you sleep in a jail? At least you have a bed and it's warm, because it was Christmas time. So the first night we slept in the jail and they give us something warm to drink and to eat in the morning. And then we started our trip to Berlin. So you go on a train for 1 hour and then you have to get out because the track was bombed. You have to walk a mile or two and then you got another train. Anyway, it took us over 1 week to go to Berlin. But in the meantime, on the train, when the German came and said, what do you have in the basket? I said, food you want to see? He said, go. By the time we came to Berlin and we were hungry, we opened the basket. What happened was the bread the woman baked crumbled. So when I opened the napkin, there were crumbs, and in the middle was the condom with the mouth. So we were so lucky nobody asked me to open, and that's what happened. And we went in Berlin, and there were 4 zones, English, American, French, and Russian. And there were offices where they give you places to sleep. Let's say if you have 2 rooms, so they take 1 room to give to the refugee to sleep, because there were a lot of German refugees which went from east to west zone. So there were not only people like us. So we were there. And then they saw that they take, didn't know then we were in the Russian zone, then take people from the street as sending to Siberia. So we went to the American zone, and then from American zone, we went to Regensburg, from Regensburg to Munich. And when we were in Munich, my parents have the best friends with whom I told you we always spend vacation together. They have a relative in Switzerland, and the relative sent them a papers that they are citizens of Uruguay or Paraguay, and they were interned from ghetto by Red Cross. They spent the rest of the war as in protection of Red Cross. There were one couple who had a daughter, and the daughter got married. So she said she doesn't want to go with the parents. The parents will send her papers so she can go with the husband. When they sent her paper for her and her husband, they were directly to Auschwitz and were killed. So some survive and some didn't. What makes them choose yes or not, I don't know. But so my parents' friends survived, and they were in friend zone. So they got in touch with us, and they said we should come. So we went, and this was Red Cross took care of the people. So we were there, and it was like hotel. Everybody had a room. We were the youngest ones, so they put us at the roof. So when I was in bed, I couldn't sit. I could only lay because the ceiling was, so very low. And then my husband decided, he left us there and he went to American store to look for opportunity to do business. But this is already after the war. I am going back to the war. When my father went to Auschwitz, he got a number, and he was selected to do for what the prisoner was doing. After a while, they came announcement, then they are looking for contrafitter, printers, and draftsmen. My father had a degree from University of Warsaw in engineering, so he said he's a draftsman. So they look at his hands. If his hands are not with calluses like that, he work outside. And they selected him. He didn't know for what, but he just wanted to get out of Auschwitz. They went to all prison looking for people who did counterfeited money before the war, professional. They took them, and not only Jews, every nationality. They got counterfeited, they get printers and draftsmen, a total of 186, I think. They took them to different camps out of Auschwitz, I think Sachsenhausen, and they put them in separate building. And they have to do counterfeited money, a pound. They couldn't make dollar, but pound was perfect. They were printing it, and they used the money as a foreign in Switzerland to buy gun, ammunition, whatever. And this was secret who never could came out. The people were all nationality. My father's job was to selecting the money. He has to select the money, the perfect and not so perfect. Sometimes he put as not so perfect a real English note because they counterfeit the money so perfectly. And they had food. They were not cold. Once a year they could write letter and receive one package a year. My father wrote to my nanny and she sent him a package. And they knew one thing, that this is a secret which never can come out. And at the end of the war, if nothing happened, they would be killed. When the American or the Russian, whoever allies were coming closer and closer, they put everything in a cases, wooden cases, the machinery, the money, everything, including the prisoner. They put them on the trucks. They went to Austria. In one of the lakes, they took local people with horses to drag all the cases and drop it in a lake. This is documented, and Americans dug up the cases and found all the machinery, money, everything. The prisoners were put in a cave, and they should be shot because nobody should know about it. But one truck had problems, so they were waiting for one truck with a prisoner. In the meantime, American came and they saved them. So this is how my father survived the war, by doing counterfeit money. And then when he was liberated, he came back to Poland. My father owned factory, but they employ 150 people. So first the German took it, and then the Polish took it because it was communistic Poland. So they sent, if he wants, he can work there, but if he doesn't, too bad. So he went on his own. So this is my father's story, how he survived. I told you my boyfriend, his name was Sevek Rubinlich. His father is number 2 in a newspaper. Was when the Judenrein liquidation of a ghetto, he was 20 years old. He was blonde, has a blue eyes, and spoke fluent German. So when I told you we're supposed to go to Hungary on a Polish paper, so there was a German woman who was married to a Jew. And during the war, she has to divorce him. And she was the one who did all the kind of dirty business. So they supposed to meet in her apartment. There were like 17 of them, something like this. And everybody came except my husband. Somehow he has an intuition to get there, and from her house they should be smuggled to Hungary. He didn't go there. People who were there, and few of them survived, said the Gestapo was there, waiting for them, and they got the 16 people and they said, we're waiting on one more. But since my husband didn't show up, they took them all to Auschwitz. Some survived, some don't. As I said, my husband's father was mayor of the city, and my future husband was going with his father. He liked the glamour of being famous, whatever. So he was known. So he went to his father's friend, a doctor, and asked if he can hide him. And he said, I cannot hide you, but you can sit in my waiting room, read newspaper. In Poland, you didn't make appointment with a doctor. You just went to doctor office, waited in waiting room, and this was it. So the doctor never knew who was sitting in his waiting room. But at night, he said, you have to leave. So where can you live? There's a curfew. He cannot. So he went to my nanny. My nanny just got married to an older man who had 18-year-old daughter, and they live in one room. So the daughter sleep in a kitchen, and her name was Balbina. And Balbina with her husband slept in a bedroom, but the husband was working nights. So when my future husband came, he was 20 years old, Balbina kept him overnight, and she kept him in her room. She couldn't leave him in a kitchen with 18-year-old girl. So she risked the problem with her husband because the stepdaughter accused her of having young men in her bedroom, and she couldn't tell him that he knows, most probably she told them that he was a friend or whatever. So he stayed with her overnight. Next day she went with him to Katowice, and he went to Germany as Polish forced labor. Do you know about forced labor? Germany was in a war, so the men were in the army, but they need people to work in factory on a land so they brought people from all over Europe, which they occupy, and they make them work in Germany. They were not prisoners. They may even get some money perhaps, but they must work in Germany. So he got paper and he went someplace and he was supposed to work in factory as a Polish forced labor. When he got there, he noticed that there are a lot of Jewish people around. Obviously, the person who gave the false paper was doing it a lot. And my husband was afraid that sooner or later the bubble will burn. They will find somebody, and then it will spread. So on Sunday, he put a Sunday clothes, because all the way, if you work in a factory, you had, a working clothes. He burned his paper, and he went to the railroad station. And he was immediately arrested. He was 20 years old. He was young. He was male. And as I said, he was blonde with blue eyes and spoke fluent German. So they said, what are you, spy? Or you ran away from the army? Who are you? So he told him. His parents were Volksdeutsch. They live in Yugoslavia. And he was in medical school. And Tito came. You remember Tito? And Tito came, and Tito killed his parents. And they beat him, they put him in jail, but he escaped. And he has no paper because Tito took his paper. And they believe him. The thing with Jewish boys was they said, take down your pants. And a lot of boys who could have survived any other way, this gives them away. But they believe him. And they put him in National Guard because he had no military training. And he said he was a medical student as a medic with the old spinster in Schleswig-Holstein, which was on Holland border. And he was there for almost 2 years as a medic, not knowing anything about medicine. But there was a spinster, old German nurse, and he was playing up to her. You're so smart, you should be a doctor. Look what happened to him, you know what to do. Some doctor wouldn't know, so she said, sure, he has this and this gangrene. Anyway, he went for 2 years of war as German National Guard medic. When he was liberated by the English, they arrested him because as a German. So he said, I am not German. So they didn't believe me, but somebody in the English army was Jewish, so they started talking. And then one thing to other, they realized that he was not German, so they released him. So this is how he survived the war, and this is how my father survived the war.
So interesting. Should we take a little break?
Yes.
If you want, I can show you pictures.
Oh, we will.
Whatever pictures I have.
We will. At the very end, we'll do the. Okay, now we're back.
When we were in Grimberg, in camp, there was a girl, and she was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, like being pregnant. But she wasn't. And somebody said she's full of water. And one day she just burst and died. So I don't know, looking back, if this is something to do with the fact that they're giving us something so we shouldn't have period and is connected with this, or was just she was one of the one who got sick, you know, and so I don't know, but a lot of girls who after the war have children, there was something wrong with the children. And one, her name was Stella. On her wedding night, she was a virgin when her husband penetrated her. She got hemorrhage and they have to take her to a hospital. So obviously nobody told us and nobody thought about. We were so happy being free and everything, you know, we didn't think about it. So a lot of them have children with disability. Some smaller, some bigger, so that's what happening. But a lot of them had children, and so that's. And when I told you we were in Jordan, but on a friend zone, and my husband was went to the American zone, and I don't know how to say it. They said some people can walk on water. The expression, did you heard it? Mm-hmm. We got there in January. By July was his birthday, and he came back to take us to the American zone. So we're having 6 months, not quite. he organized a business. He had a gross handling, which is a wholesale of clothing, of machinery, things which the German couldn't get because it was post-war, so everything was bombed, so there wasn't new production. And the people who had the old stuff from before the war, they were hoarding then and selling on black market. You could get everything for regular price with coupons. But what good the coupons when you didn't have the merchandise? So he has a whole warehouse of merchandise. He had the main floor of the building where the office is. On second floor we were living. My father has a room. We have bedroom, living room, dining room, kitchen. I had a cook. The office was full with people. It was completely decorated with dishes and forks and everything. I have a cook. And my husband had 2 trucks, half-ton brand new trucks, and a car, like a regular photo car. And he came to pick us up. So in July, when I came to the Wilshofen, to the Germany, American side of Germany, there were completely furnished apartment and a full-fledged business. And I wanted to give him a birthday present, a baby. But because they drink and they got drunk, so I was afraid the baby will be drunk. So I postponed the present till he got sober a week later. So my daughter was conceived and born in Germany. She was born in Passau, because Passau was about 3/4 hour from Wilshofen and has a Säulingsheim run by NANDEB, hospital where only baby were born. So she was born in Passau, and she had a nurse, a professional nurse, you know, like you see in England with uniforms and things, Schwester Franziska. And by the time she was 2 years old, we decided that actually I was the one who wanted to leave Europe because they were blockade of Berlin and I was so afraid of another war. So we tried to get paper to America. We didn't have anybody here, but we got the paper and we came first and my father came 6 months later. And my husband could do a lot of things what other people couldn't do. So he arranged for us to go on a plane with American war brides. And we were in Munich in hotel because he liquidated business, sold it, paid taxes, very legitimate to the very end. And they postponed the planes for whatever reason. And he said, listen, we're ready to go, so we buy tickets. So we came on American Overseas Airline. One-way ticket was $400 because only it was American thing. And it took 18 hours and 5 stops. So we came by airplane to America. And when he liquidated his business, we sold it legitimate. He paid taxes in Germany. So we came with money. So when we came here, we have to register that for 5 years that we were not arrested and we're not on welfare. everything, and after 5 years we got our citizenship. When I got my citizenship, it was 54, 55, something like this. And there were 150 people in the courthouse sworn in. And I would say 25% was white and 75% were black people sworn in for citizenship.
Where were the black people from?
Jamaica, I don't know, Ireland. You know, I didn't ask them, I just...
This was New York City?
Yeah, in Brooklyn, because we were living in Forest Hills in Queens. And then I was the only child. And I didn't want my daughter to be only child, so originally I wanted a dozen children, but in practicality, I had 2. I have my daughter and then I have my son. And my father came, and I told you he was an engineer, so he worked in America as a draftsman. And he remarried a sweet, lovely woman. I adore her. And she was German from Hanover. Her father was Catholic, her mother was from a religious Jewish home. When her father fell in love with her mother, he not only converted to Judaism, but he also was circumcised at the age of 23. So her mother survived and 2 sisters survived. She lost 1 sister and the father died.
What was her name?
Renee Fercher. And I was lucky I have second mother. And most important, she was wonderful to my father. So, and I really, really love her because she was so good to him, and I adore him till the day he died. And I made sure that we live in 2 connected houses. There were twin houses. He was living in one, and I was living in the other. And when I left my husband, I got a job. So every day, and I said to him that I had gorgeous apartment, so he should leave. He said, you want to leave, you leave, in spite. So I left, but I stayed in the same building because my father was next building, and so every day after work, I went to see my father till the day he died. He had Parkinson, and he had a Polish companion because sometimes he was start talking Polish, and his wife was German. She didn't understood Polish, so he has the judge. The woman was judge in Poland. So I called around 5 o'clock, and she said to me that he is dressed, he had lunch, he took a nice nap, and now he insists of going out to stretch his legs. And I said to her, please be careful, because it was winter, January, was snowing, and I was afraid that he may slip and, break a hip or something. She said, don't worry, I will take good care of him. And she left. I said, okay, I will see him later. And about 3/4 hour later, I got a phone call that he got sick, so I knew something was wrong. He went with her, and when they were around the corner, he said he is weak, he wants to go home. And he collapsed on the street and died on heart attack. Perhaps the cold weather caused whatever. And of course it was shock for me and his wife, but
How old was he?
looking back, he was in his 76. So this was blessing, because he was function, he had nice life, a loving wife, he loved my children. And so it was harder on us than on him because he didn't wait for the thing to come, so then I felt like an orphan when I lost him.
You went through so much together, didn't you?
Yeah, my father was my everything, so all my life I never had my father raise his voice or say something bad. He was a really exceptional man, when more people I meet, more people I know, I realize, what a kind person, and people came to his funeral, and as I said, even in camp and everything, as much as he could, he was helping people. So I had a wonderful memory about my father, and my son is a lot of him. He told me that he was going to some woman, and he went Friday, and the son was there and said that she's in hospital, got sick, and she will die, and eventually she died next day. So he called the son, and he said, in case he know how it is, and if he wants to talk, why shouldn't he? She could always call him, and he would come to him and comfort him. And
A nice
yeah.
man. Didn't you say something about when he was counterfeiting, they offered him women, but he refused?
Yeah, they had, as I said, they have food. I don't know what kind of food, but enough not to be hungry. They have warm clothes and warm places, because you cannot work being cold and have frozen finger. And that they wear regular clothes, and they offer him woman, and they refuse because they said it can be my daughter, my sister, my wife. So they said no.
Did you ever hear any other stories about women, how women were treated, or any of these other things?
How women were treated when I was in ghetto. I knew some women, not friendly, not anything, just knew him from neighborhood. And I remember they took 5 or 10, I don't remember, men, and they hanged them publicly, and they make the wife watching it, sit there and watch them being hanged, which, to me was most cruel thing. I know a school friend of my husband, Janek Kleiman, they together graduated the same, so they were the same age, went to Auschwitz and was castrated by Mengele. And he survived. He married a German woman and adopted a daughter. So that's what people I know. But
And you were with a lot of women, right? Like you worked with a lot of women.
yeah.
Were you guys all together, or was there any abuse?
I was with my mother. In camp, you're always looking for a body. When you're alone, you look for a body. I didn't have to. I was with my mother to the very end. So I knew the girls, and as much as, but I was never intimate, or I never confined, or they never confined in me, because I was with my mother.
Speaking of your mother, Valerie mentioned your early life with. What was that like? Because she mentioned something about your mother wasn't in the house that much. She only came at dinner time. And what was your life like when you were growing up?
My life was, I tell you. I got up in the morning because the school started at 8. And we have live-in, of course, housekeeper. So I have breakfast. So we have continental breakfast. As a kid, I live on Ovaltine. You know, my father went to work, and I went to school. The school started at 8. The main meal was at 2 o'clock, the dinner. When I came from school, we have dinner. So my father was there because he worked, and then it was like 2 or 3 hours for dinner, and then they started at 3 or 4 to 7. You know, there was the break, big break during the day. So we have dinner, and after dinner my father went back to work, and my mother went to the club. She was a big card player. So she was going to the club to play cards, and after work my father picked her up. They went for supper, which was much lighter, you know, like lunch. And by the time they came home, I was already asleep. So I didn't see much during the week. Sunday, you know, was the day that they didn't work, and they were home. So that was it. And I remember, like in September, they were buying fruit and for winter. We have 2 basements. One was for coal and wood, the other one was for vegetable. They bought a big bag, a barrel-up bag, potato, beets, carrots, whatever. And there were not supermarkets, so you didn't go shopping every day the way we do in America. And then they make their own jam, their own confiture, their own pickled herring, their own pickled cucumber. Everything was homemade. And there were open market, where the farmers were coming with the produce. So you went and you bought, you know, but it wasn't pre-packed. You pick up a butter, you know how the butter will taste. This one is sweet, this one is salted. The farmer makes the butter, so sometimes it was a little bitter, sometimes was a little, so they was selling it on a cabbage leaf. And you taste it, because every time the butter tastes different. And you bought farmer cheese and everything. Meat you bought at the butcher, and fish you bought at the fish store. But if you wanted the chicken, they have it in a crane. And you said, I want the chicken. So they blew in a bag of the chicken. If the chicken was yellow, it meant it was fat. If it was blue, it meant it was skinny. So you said, I want this. So the farmer just took the head of the chicken and then pulled the feather, and by the time you came home, you have to stay with a tweezer and pull the hair from the chicken. It wasn't as clean as you get here. Meat you bought at the butcher, but the market, which was 2 or 3 times a week, they were coming with the produce from the farm. There was fresh, but as I said, you know, you never know if you get the same taste, because sometimes the milk they make the butter or the cream or whatever was a little sour or bitter or whatever. There was a grocery store, so they didn't have cans. You know, when they later on at the end, they brought from Czechoslovakia some Sprott sardine, which were canned, you know, but you could get in a store. But everything was fresh. Everything was, you want pasta, you make the pasta. You wanted cake, you bake the cake. Everything was homemade. This is why they have cooks, because they were busy cooking all day. And there were ice bags, they were not refrigerated, so they brought ice, and there was like a drawer under it with the water. You have to take it out and throw the water. We didn't have central heating, we have tile stove. Every room had the beautiful tiles, they were different color and carved, and there were two, at the bottom there were two doors. The bigger doors was to put wood and paper to start the fire, and the part of the country we were living, there were coal mines, so coal was plentiful. And you use the same thing, what, for barbecue? You know, the little pieces, because they hold the heat better. And in the morning, you open the smaller door where the ashes were. And in front of the tile stove, the stove was very high. Oops, sorry. So it was like a brass plate, because sometimes ashes fell on the floor, so you didn't want it to mix the floor. So it went on the brass, and then you sweep it and clean it. And this one, bathroom, we have a tap, and behind the tap was a tank. And under the tank, you have to heat the water if you wanted to have a hot water for the tap. In a kitchen, there were cold water, and a stove has a cold stove. So you put a cold, and this is how you make it. But part of the stove was stainless steel, like a tank, and you put water there, and this is how you got hot water. And the iron was not electric. It was iron, and inside was like a little sausage made out of stone with a hole, and you have a hook, and you put it in a hot coal till it got hot, and you put it in an iron, and you iron for 15 minutes. Then it got cold, so you put it in a coal and took another one and put in, and you do the iron. We didn't have washing machine. On the roof was the laundry room, so they have a big, like, table stuff, and they have metal sink. They were going like this to wash the sink, and they boil it. There were big pots where they boiled the laundry, and a wooden stick where they pick it up. And then they have something which bleach it and starch it. Everything was homemade to do it. And then it was so white, it was in a wall, and when you pull out, it has wire, so big one, and there were electricity or gas going because it was hot, so you put the laundry over it and you put it back to dry. And then we have Magel. Magel, you took the cloth and they wrap it around. It was about so big, like a round sink, and something very big and heavy went over, and it went back and forward. But they call it Magel. I never saw it since before the war. So, and then they brought this laundry home to iron with the. So when a woman came on Monday to do the laundry, she finished by Saturday. So the laundry took a whole week. For the special woman was doing the laundry. And if you want carpet, there were not vacuum cleaner, there were only brushes. So what they did, they took the carpet downstairs, and there was something which hang, you put the carpet over, and with a straw was around like this. On a handle, you beat the carpet. So the dust, dirt go away. And in winter, when it snows, you put it face down in the snow, like to freshen up, and you brought it upstairs and put it on it. So they didn't have electric iron, you didn't have hair dryer, you didn't have vacuum cleaners, you didn't have refrigerator. Life was much, you have to heat water if you wanted a bath. So life was much more complicated when I was a child.
What were your favorite foods? I heard something about Vedel, or
You know, there were traditional food, like Christmas was a good goose, potato dumplings, red cabbage. Easter was ham and color eggs, hard-boiled eggs, and Sankach, there was a cake, it looked like screwdriver and was so wide and so high. I never, you have to have a special thing, only bakery can make it, I don't think any. So, you know, and then they have krusciki, you can get it in Milan, in Italy at Christmas time. This is a very, you roll it very, very thin, square like this, you cut it in the middle, and you pull it. The Italian call it angel wings. Polish, they call it krusciki. And they usually have it around Christmas time. So was Papi strudel was Christmas time. Cheesecake was Easter time. You know, traditional foods which came with, in summer we have only fruit soup, which were cold. And Sunday dinner was baby chicken, which I would call Cornish hen in America, new potatoes, which were very little, and cucumber salad. And fruit soups, there was summer, but the Cornish hen was usually Sunday. In winter was Sunday dinner, filet mignon with mushroom and mashed potatoes, and, you know, so that's what, but they have a lot of goose, especially in the fall. Yeah, so that's...
sounds delicious. So some people watching this might wonder why you had Christian meals. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your religious upbringing?
I have none. I have none. I know it's fun for some people cannot understand, but as I said, my parents never went to church, they never went to synagogue, they never discussed religion, but observe Christmas and Easter the way you observe Thanksgiving. It was tradition. But I told you, my nanny sometime went to church, she took me with her. I went, but it wasn't, you know, she just took me with her. So I went with her. And you want to know something funny? When I was a baby, my mother has a friend who owned a land. And she went to visit her. And when she was there, it was summer, so I must be 6 months old. My nanny got sick. And so the lady with whom my mother was friendly, and this was her house, said in a village there is a woman who has couple of children, and the 16-year-old is very nice and very dependable. You can ask her to come and take care of me till my nanny got well, whatever was wrong with her. And she came to take care of me, and she asked my mother that she wants to go with her to Warsaw. And my mother said, what, to take a farm girl, little girl with her. And she said, when you get older, you can come and visit me. And when she got older, and my mother's friend came to Warsaw, she came with her to visit us as a guest. And she never left. She stayed with us through, she hired my husband, she sent packages to my father, and after the war, when we came to America, I was always in touch with her. I sent her money, I sent her walkie, I sent, till the day my father died. She was sending her packages, and I was sending her packages till the day she died. And one day I got a phone call, and a young girl and a young boy asked if they can come to visit me. And she said she is Balbina's granddaughter. Her father is her son. And she came, and they came to America, the young couple. They stayed, they got citizenship, they married, they have 2 children who now must be teenagers. I'm still in touch with them. When her parents came to visit, they came to visit me. So it's Balbina's son and the daughter-in-law. And so, what can I tell you?
Were your parents friends with just everybody? Who were your friends? Like, who were your friends? Who were your parents' friends? Were they tend to be more Jewish or mixed or?
When we were living in Warsaw, my mother had relatives, brothers and sisters. They were not Jewish, and all my parents' friends were not Jewish. And if they were Jewish, you didn't know, because they were as much Jewish as my parents. So religion never came, you know, there never was a problem. Nobody ever asked. Never. I never knew the Jew exist as long as I was living in Warsaw. They, you know, they didn't, didn't go to school. I was too little. I never knew. And if there were Jews, I didn't know, because they looked just like us. And they didn't advertise the Judaism. In Poland, nobody advertised the Judaism because it was cares.
Did you ever hear about anti-Semitism?
Never. Never, 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 till I came to Belgium, and it was Hitler came to power, and it was a Crystal Night, and then his story, you know, and then I found out that I was Jewish. But even till the last, my parents never observed the Judaism. Never. When I came to America, I was invited to Jewish Seder. I was invited, but I have no idea, you know, about the history. I saw on television a show, History of the Jews. So I was glued to the television for almost 2 hours, I think, because the visual is better than reading, you know. And they showed the beginning, and it was not really history, because, listen, but you know, they show you the people they said that one time in a history of Jewish, somebody came to them and said, if you pay us taxes, we will protect you, because different people always attack the poor Jews. So Jews have to decide to pay taxes and be protected, but whoever it was, Egypt, country, Roman, I don't remember. And some said no. And they said that the assassin came from a Jewish word because the people who were pro-independence were going to a market and they showed the men were wearing like kaftans at this time, and they were having the knife under the kaftan and they were killing the people who were voting for the taxes. So this is how I found out. And then after the war, a lot of people I knew from my school went to Israel, including my parents' best friends, I told you. And I went to visit Israel for 2 weeks with my friends. I was with them. And I was treated like a queen because this was my first time. You know, I was the new girl in town. So everybody invited us and everybody showed us everything. And I really couldn't have a better time, and they were showing me everything and we went every place. And I admire what they did tremendously. And I will always be pro-Israel. If you want me, ask me if I want to live there, no. But my loyalty is not to Poland, definitely not Poland. My loyalty is to America, because this is my country. And a second one, when I see now what is going on in Israel, make me sick. And when I see what is going on, the commentator, you know, I stopped watching NBC because I saw a commentator saying things which I definitely didn't like, and I found it very anti-Semitic. A Sunday I was watching Cooper, had 2 hours, I think, about Israel. And I wanted to cry when I was listening to the people whose children are still hostages and everything, because I feel the whole world is against Israel because what they did to the Palestinians in Gaza, but nobody talk about the Israeli who are hostages or kill or rape. You know, they somehow always will be the guilty one. And they are the victim. So, and they said Roosevelt was such a marvelous president. I wasn't here during Roosevelt, but I know that there was a ship with German refugees, and he refused to let them come to America. And he has National Guard, a Navy, following the ship. God forbid somebody may jump and try to swim. So, and they said he's next to God, Roosevelt. Some people consider him such a great president. And yet he was anti-Semitic because 200 or 300 people he was sending to death. And he knew it. And the country could absorb 300 people. Now we have millions and millions coming.
How was American life for you after having grown up in Europe? What was it like to adjust over here? And did you end up working somewhere?
It was period of adjustment. I didn't work. I took care of the house, I took care of my daughter. Later on, I had my son. I have housekeeper. I told you we came with money. I brought a lot of stuff from Germany. So we got apartment and we bought furniture and my husband started business. So it was, and we were living in Queens. And a lot of Polish women were living in Queens. So we socialized 90% with Polish women. And we went to Polish hotel in the summer. We went from 4th of July till Labor Day. We stay in Polish hotel and with Polish people. So it took a long, I have some American friends, neighbors, people like this. But our social life mostly was Polish people in beginning. Later on, it spread, but right in the beginning, there were concentration of Polish people, and they have Polish store and Polish things, which we like, Hampstead in Forest Hills, and so that's what happening.
Did you work at Bergdorf's?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
You see, when I married my husband, women don't supposed to work. And I didn't work. When my kids were in high school, I went to interior school to design. I learned and I graduated. When I wanted a job, at this time, my husband had a tremendous business and we traveled a lot all over the world. So to work on a job for $150 or something, I would have to give the traveling, which was first class VIP service. So I didn't work, not till I left my husband. When I left my husband, must be next door neighbor.
Should we take a break?
Yes.
Let's take a little break.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. Tell us about that.
About Fifi, we have a little dog before the one named Fifi. It was white Maltese, and it was adorable dog. I used to take him out because he was the only dog like this in a city, and it attracted boys. So I used to take her out. And life was different, much more conservative. Boys didn't go to girls, girls didn't go to boys, not sleepover. But I was never, as kid at school, I never belonged to a clique. I always was different than anybody else. So I was making Fifi a birthday. When Fifi has a birthday, I could invite boys. So this was one way to skin the cat. So my friend said to me, Marisha, this year already I was to 5 Fifi birthday because I used Fifi. And then at the end, she was left with our Balbina, I told you so, till she died. And later on, when I got married, I got a little dog. We call him Gapuś, stupid Polish, because we couldn't train him. And when my daughter was born, I gave him away. I was afraid that he will be jealous and hurt her. Then when we were in America and my son was in high school, my daughter got a divorce and she's got her poodle, standard poodle, white, gorgeous dog. And she got sick, so she came home to recuperate with the dog. And then she left, and I got the dog. So the dog stayed with us for a long time. But my son was in college, in high school, so he was home. My husband was home. And you didn't have to clean after dogs at this time. It was before Catch came with the Scooper Duper. And then Charlie died. And we never have dog. My daughter has dogs. My grandson has dogs. So that's what my neighbor have a dog. So when I go to restaurant, I ask for bones sometime, and I bring. If I have bones, I give it to the dog. But you have pictures of it there. My grandson. So Sunday, yesterday, or day before, sorry, was a Cookie birthday. He was 8 years old. So they made him a birthday cake and party. If you want, my son has the video of the dog birthday party with the birthday cake.
Do you want to tell us about a little bit about how you got connected with Bergdorf's and the Lighthouse? Also, we worked for the Lighthouse once.
I tell you how. I was married to my husband, and I'm supposed to be married, and he's supposed to take care of me like every other husband. But my husband started drinking, and he had a drinking problem. And with the drinking problem, the other problem started. And he couldn't stop. No matter what I did and what I said, he didn't. So he always said, without me, you cannot do nothing because you have no education, you have no profession. He was thinking that I have to stay with him because other way I cannot support myself. So it came to a point that I couldn't. So I have a lunch with a friend of my American, and I went to School of Interior Design where I graduated, and I said I would like a job. So they said, well, right now we have nothing open. When get open, we would let you know. And I went to lunch with a friend of mine. She was American. And I said to her, you know, they told me I have to wait and I don't know when. And I'm really at the end of my rope. And she was American businesswoman, you know the type. And she said to me, Maria, why don't you go to department store? You're young, you're attractive, you're bilingual, they can definitely use you. So I left her on 2nd Avenue and 60th Street, and I walked to Bergdorf, and I said, I would like a job. So the receptionist said to me, application for job, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 12. Now it's 3 o'clock on Thursday. And a woman, very elegant, the older one, passed by, and she listened to me talking, and she said, would you please follow me? She took me to her office. She introduced herself. She was the head of the employment office. She said, I listened to your conversation. She looked at my application, and she said, you didn't put your previous employment. I said, no, I didn't, because I never worked before. So, but I need a job, and I need very badly. And she said to me, what do you know about retailing? I said, nothing, but I learn fast. And she said, okay, I take chance with you, part-time for $65 a week. And I wanted to say to her, God bless you. And I got the job, and I came home, and I said to my husband, we have gorgeous big apartment, but I slept in separate bedroom. I slept in my daughter's room because she was already out of the house, and Lenny was still at Wharton. So he was coming home. And I said, I got a job. He said, as what? I said, salesperson. My husband said, salesperson? Mrs. Rodin, what will do if some of our friends will come? I would ask if may I help you. And if this didn't kill him, so I knew I am safe. And I stay from September till January. By January, I went to the office and I said, I work already. Can I get a full-time job? And they said yes. They give me a full-time job for $125 a week. And they promoted me to be in charge of some department. So when I got full-time job and $125 a week, I left my husband. I moved. I said, can you move and leave me the apartment? He said, you want to move? You move. So I moved. And I have to stay in the same building because my father was the twin building and he was sick and I have to stay next to him. So I work and slowly I got promoted and I wind up being manager of a floor. As junior executive, I was making $250 and was paying by check in a bank. I didn't get the money, money went to check. And I was working and then they said they will be open on Sunday. And this I didn't like because in the meantime, my daughter got married and had a baby. And she was working in real estate and my son-in-law doctor, so they were working over weekend because real estate is the best business weekend. And my son and I took care of the baby, which I adore. And this was something I would not give for nothing in the world. So when they were open Sunday, I didn't like it. And I had an American friend who said to me, knew, because we were talking about it, that she was very active in a lighthouse, one of the patrons. And she said there is a store downstairs and the couple who ran it, the woman ran, the man was working in the office, are retiring to Florida. So if I want, she can get me the job. The pay was the same, but they were closed Saturday and Sunday and Friday after Thanksgiving. So even I got the same pay, the working conditions were what I wanted. So I started working and running the store in Lighthouse so I could be free for my baby. My daughter dropped him Saturday morning on the way to work and pick him up Sunday evening on the way home from work. And I have him here all the time till they left. It was 5 years old. And when he was 3, he had everything. He toys, tricycle, everything. He was riding the tricycle, and I said, Justin, I told you not to ride the tricycle in the living room. So he did give me a dirty look, and she said, Grandma, I'm looking for parking space. Okay? So how could I not laugh at it like this? So then they I retired about the same time, and they did the renovation, so they closed the store for a few months. So, and then my stepmother, which was like mother to me, got sick. I got a new job at Napoleon in a Trump building, and I went first day for the job. And I got a phone call from Florida, from the doctor, because she moved to Florida after my father died, that Renee is very sick. So I said, listen, I am sorry. And she said, don't tell anybody in Florida, you are not my real daughter. So I said, my mother is very sick, I have to go. And I went to Florida, and I was with her for 8 weeks, because this is how long she was in, and she died at the end, but I am glad I stayed with her. I was with her till the very, very end. As I said, I was lucky I have two mothers, because besides being so good to my father, she was very good to me. And then when she died, then, you know, I could afford to retire and stay, and then my daughter moved to Italy, and that's what happened.
Do you want to tell us just a little bit about who your children are and who your grandchildren are?
Yeah, I have my daughter and my son. I wanted to make 12 children, but the situation wasn't the right one for 12. So I have this Lenny, my second child. I didn't want my daughter to be the only daughter. And my daughter married and moved to Italy. My son was married, divorced. Now he is with the Regina, who was here for about 13 years together. And at one time, my daughter, they decided to move to Italy, because the thing what my son-in-law ran about the hair restoration was not done in Italy, so he was the first one, the pioneer, and he is now a very big shot, so my daughter has a very lovely life. Her boys were born in New York, and now they have dual citizenship. One is an international lawyer, and the other one is executive in one, so they live. Justin is now in Bali on vacation, and Mike is getting next week, I think, married for the second time in Barcelona for her family. They call me every single day. I am so blessed. And if I ever get emotional, it's when I talk about my children. Because I don't know how many have children like this. My daughter and my son, he comes, he takes care of everything. I am legally blind, so I don't see anything, I cannot read anything. He does everything for me. He goes, besides finances and correspondence, he does everything, shop, no matter. I need bra, I go to bra store with him. He go through the thing looking for the right size. I mean, I have marvelous children. And to me, they are worth everything in the world. And it goes for my son-in-law. And you saw my son's girlfriend. She was here, Regina, when you came. The tall lady.
What about Valerie? What's that story?
Valerie just, she's a granddaughter of somebody I knew in camp. But I'm talking now about the relation.
Yeah.
You know, like my daughter, my son.
Valerie
my daughter
mentioned-
is fighting with me now, I should come. They built a room specially for me. The room is bigger than my living room. My bathroom, I cannot tell you how gorgeous it is. I have fireplace, I have television, you name it, I have everything over there. And the help, and he said, Grandma Maria, we did it for you. When are you coming to living? You know, knowing that you are wanted, you don't have to go. But knowing that you are wanted with such a love and everything, I don't think many people have it. I have so many friends who unfortunately are dead. And I see how the children are treated there. You know, sometimes you wonder and you said, you know, so what I have is very, very exceptional. I may not want to go to Milan to live there, but I know how much they want me there. You know, they don't consider obligation. They build the suite specially for me. And they call it Grandma Room. So, and I have helped there and everything, so. But on the other hand, I have Lenny here, and he is marvelous. So I cannot, as long as I can live by myself, and I have Lenny to do all the thing for me, you know, the paperwork, the correspondence, the money, the thing. So I am okay.
So,
And I talk with my daughter twice, 3 times a day, at least. Lenny got me Alexa, so I can even see them when I talk to them.
that's great. Is there anything else you'd want to tell the world about anything that comes from your experiences or
Honey, I
the
tell
love
you
in
what.
your family or anything at all about the world?
Listen, my boyfriends have nothing to do with Holocaust, so this is extra chapter. If you have plenty of time and you want entertainment, you can come to me. We talk about my boyfriends after I left my husband. But,
What? You can say it. You can tell us a little bit about that if you want.
honey, they may not allow it on television during the daytime, so let's keep it for later. So, like they
Great.
said, nothing is lost.
Any thoughts on God or anything like that?
I beg your pardon?
Any thoughts for us about what God means or
You know something, honey, in all honesty, I just wonder if a God exists, how can he allow to things happening which are happening? You know? And I am not only talking now about Israel, all over the world. The drought, the earthquake, the things like this, the children starting. Tell me one thing. Children are born. How come one is healthy, one is sick? They are newborn baby. They didn't do anything to nobody. Why? You know, what the poor, you kill a person, you rob a person, you get punished because you did something wrong. But baby didn't know anything, they were just born. One are healthy, one are sick. One are born in a wealthy home with care and love, and one are just dropped in a gutter. Why?
any advice?
You know, it's not advice, it's, you know, just question if God, who's supposed to take care of people, why doesn't he take care of, you know, you do good thing, you get awarded, you do bad thing, you get punished. I can understand it. But they are children, they didn't do anything. You know, and it's funny, because the most religious people were the first one who were killed. They were the most religious one. So you never know. There is a cardinal of Paris, I don't know if he's still alive. His name is Lustiger. He went to school with me. He was hidden in a convent during the war, and he converted, and he is a cardinal. I don't know if he's still alive or not. So can you imagine how religious he is to be a cardinal? They would even consider him for a pope, but they didn't. So I don't know, you know, I don't, and I think if there is somebody up there, it's one for all people. No one for Christian, no one for Jews, no one for Muslim or another Buddhism or whatever religious there are. In Japan, I saw people were coming to the, they call it shrine. They brought the food, they pray, and then they took the food away. They didn't leave it because they know nobody will come and eat it. So they took it home. You know, Gandhi. I mean, there are people who try, you know, to do good things. So I don't know, I have my doubts. I have my doubts. You know, there's expression, God give. And if my mother would say God give, and my father would say, if I don't give you, nobody else will. So, you know, so I don't. I wish, I envy religious people, because if something happened, this is God will, God did, God took. But I said, you know, you're sick, perhaps if I take to another doctor, perhaps, you know, I could prolong it, I could do something. So, any kind of religion who really, really believe in it and believe that this is, I used to go after I left my husband to Al-Anon. You know what is Al-Anon? Al-Anon, when I went there, they're talking about higher power. This, I believe. There is something what make you do certain thing which, you know, but so for me, Al-Anon was a big help at this time. Yeah, because as you know, alcoholic blame you for everything. The rain is falling down, is you fall. The sun is shining, is you fall. But Al-Anon is telling you, no, it isn't, you fall. So, and after I left my husband, he was hid and there, and eventually he moved to Germany, and he was living with a woman, and he died on cirrhosis of the liver. So I got a letter, telegram from State Department, what we want to do with his body, that they would dispose it or we should dispose it. So Lenny went and had him cremated and brought the ashes back to America. And my daughter went to mausoleum in Westchester, and they put the ashes up there.
One more question before we close. I was wondering, have you been back to Germany or Poland or any of those places you knew? And
I went to Poland about 15 years ago because my son had a conference, and my daughter said, if you want to go, now it's time you go with us. So I went with the delegation. Okay? My daughter's name is Gambino. The other people were all American or Italian. And my name is Maria Rodin, except in American passport, born Poland. So when they opened my passport, they knew that I was born in Poland. They went through everything. They opened my wallet, they checked my money, they checked my lipstick. I have a little thing like this, a nail file. They took the nail file. They were awful. I wanted to buy souvenir presents so I went to a store. The woman was talking on the phone about her boyfriend. Nobody was in the store with my daughter and I. My daughter is blonde, blue eyes, doesn't look Jewish at all. We were speaking English. And I said to her, I would like to see some earrings. Can you help? If not, we're going someplace else. So go. Okay. I was staying in 5-star hotel. I had beautiful nightgown from Bergdorf. And I left it in a bed when I left in the morning. I came back, I didn't have the nightgown. I said, I don't have the nightgown. Perhaps you lost it. I said, nightgown is not nothing like a glove. You'd walk out with it. Because if I walk in a nightgown, and I lost it, I have to come back naked. We don't know. I hated it. I hated it. My grandson had a Polish girlfriend. So after a while, he went with her to Poland to meet her family, and he came back. He hated Poland, he hated her family, he hated her, and they broke up. So I don't have much love for the Polish people.
Have you been to Germany?
Many times.
And was that better?
Yeah. I live in Germany after the war. I was in Germany for Christmas, not this year, the year before. And it was a beautiful day, and we were in Munich, and we were sitting outside the restaurant, and there was a square, and I could see the red thing with the swastika hanging from the window. You know, Munich was the cradle of the Nazi. And everybody, they live and they are happy and like nothing happened. If you ask me if they are anti-Semitic, at least they cover it. Polish people are open with it, but the German, they cover it.
So you think it's still alive today? Anti-Semitism, you experience the feeling of it.
I tell you something. I find that you have it every place. Every place. You know, my daughter was dating a young man, the Park Avenue crowd. And there is a Metropolitan Club on 60th Street, very exclusive. And they were there, and a group of young people, there were many years ago before she got married. And they make some anti-Semitic jokes. And she said, I hope you stop, please stop, because I am Jewish and I am offended. So they said to her date, Alan, she's joking. He said, no, she's not. You know, she doesn't look Jewish, so the anti-Semitism is every place, honey. If you think it isn't, it is. Some cover it, some didn't, but it is. Even in our politics. Okay? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So that's what's happening. Now we have election, them do and them don't. Dumb and dumber. So I don't know what will happen. You know, I asked somebody who was very democratic, and I said, I know you're very democratic and everything. What happened now with Biden taking stand on Israel and the poor Palestinian? And they said, we don't know. There were this kind of Democrats who have fundraiser in their home. You know, big, big money donors. And now they don't know.
More mysteries to be solved.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can wrap this up now. Is there any final statement you want?
You wanted the pictures.
Yes, we'll do the pictures next. Thank you so much for all
You're
of those
very
details.
welcome.
Your memory's incredible.
My memory, anything you want to know from the past, I remember.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope some people, 100 years from now, will be watching it and thinking the old story is just, Indian and cowboys and things like this. So, and life.
One.
And what do we see here?
This is the pictures which was snapped on a street when I was walking with my mother in Warsaw. I am not sure how old I was, but not very old. And the people were snapping the pictures, so this must be the original. I make a copy for my kids, but this must be the original because it's so very small.
And where are they walking?
On a street in Warsaw. Mm-hmm. I cannot recognize the street because there is no landmark behind it or anything.
Thank
But this
you.
is the centrum of the city because this is where we were living. So being so little, how far could I go? So it must be someplace in a city.
Okay, thank you.
One.
Can you tell us what this is?
This is my father with our dog, Fifi. And this must be done shortly before the war. And it must be a lot of sun because his eyes are squeaking. And this is the few pictures I have of my father from before the war. This is, I think, I have one or two, so this is one of them.
Thank you.
If I would know you are coming, I would look for the other pictures, which I have. For me, they're very precious, so I keep them separated.
Thank you.
Perhaps I should make a copy for every kid to have.
Sure. Thank you very
So-
much.
One.
So what is this picture?
This is the pictures. This is still my father. Oh, with Renee. Yeah, this is already after the war. My father married Renee, which we adored. She was a lovely woman, a good wife, a good mother to me and to my kids. She said, don't say I'm not your real mother. And if I said I have two mothers, I meant it.
Thank
I
you.
meant it, yeah.
Thank you.
One.
And what is this?
This is the pictures of my mother. There was a place, Krynica, a mountain resort, and my mother was there. For vacation, whatever. The few times she was by herself with friends, and they have the mountain people with the dog. They stop you to make pictures. So the dog is not our dog. It was just as a prompt for the pictures.
Oh,
So,
yes, thank you.
yeah.
And who are they?
This is me and my husband about the time we got married, shortly after we got married. So this is how I look and this is how he look.
Okay, thank you.
One.
And who is this?
Lenny,
And who is Lenny?
yeah.
Who am I? Who am I?
My son, what do you mean? Everybody knows Lenny is my son.
Not the people watching.
All
In the
right,
building, everybody know who you are.
thank you.
One.
This is my daughter, Mausi. I call her Mausi because she is named after my mother, Irena. But when she was little, she was born shortly after my mother died. It was very hard for me to say it. So when once the nurse said at night she heard noises, she was scratching the crib, and it was like little Mäuschen, which German mean a little mouse. So somehow she became Mäuschen, and then in America she became Mousy. So I am the only one who still call her Mousy. Everybody call her Irene. I wouldn't mind calling her Irene, but Irene in Europe was not the right name. It was Irena, so I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
So, and
And who are these fellows?
they are my grandchildren when they were little. When I was taking care of them, they were little, they were adorable, and I was crazy about them.
What are the names?
On the left is Mikey, and on the right is Justin. And now Mikey is married, and Justin is a big lawyer, and right now he is in Bali with his girlfriend.
Thank
He's
you.
not married yet.
Thank you very much.
So, and this is a pictures from my 99th birthday. And on the left is my little Justin, and on the right is my little Mikey. So this is how they look today. And they are the most important thing in my life,
Ah,
the two boys.
thank you.
And
John?
I talk to them every single day, no matter where they are.
Very nice. Thank you.
So I am blessed with them. This is a pictures from my 99th birthday. And on the left is my little Justin, and on the right is my little Mikey. So this is how they look today. And they are the most important thing in my life,
Ah,
the two boys.
thank you.
And
John?
I talk to them every single day, no matter where they are.
Very nice. Thank you.
So I am blessed with them.
One.
And what are we looking at here?
This is a copy of a newspaper from before the war about the social famous Jewish people in Oberschlesien. And the second from left is my father-in-law. He was president of the city or mayor of the city, I am not sure because it was before my time. He was arbitrary judge, and people who can read Polish or somebody who can translate can say who everybody was. They were all did something, and they were very, in Polish Jewish society.
So his name was Lazar Rubenlicht?
Yeah. My husband changed the name when he came to America.
Thank you.
And this is the pictures of my daughter with my son-in-law, Enzo Gambino. When they were in England, they were introduced to Prince Philip, and they had conversation because Prince Philip wanted to know about his profession. And he's married to my daughter for 30-something years, and I couldn't ask for better son-in-law.
Great. And was there a charity involved with this?
Yeah, this was a charity affair, and that's when it happened.
All right. Thank you very
So-
much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for interviewing me. I hope some people will have it and learn from it, from the history, things which happen, and life goes on.
Thank you so much. And this
You're very
concludes
welcome.
this concludes our interview.